All right, we're going to call this meeting to order. It's a special meeting of the Committee of the Whole on a Wednesday night. And roll call, I think all councilors are present except Councilor Barber. Yes. Does anybody have any calendar or communications? Great.
Karen.
Oh, Karen, yep, I'm sorry.
I just wanted to report that I attended the first meeting of the TIF Advisory Committee, and we went through orientation on the whole TIF program and the legislation and everything. We'll be having our next meeting in a couple of weeks, and at that point then we'll start to talk about the logistics of actually drafting the legislation that would, or the documents that would come to the council for approval to actually establish a district and start moving the project forward.
Okay. Yes.
Who's on that with you?
There are representatives from the Planning Commission, Economic Development Commission, City Council, zoning, the staff from the planning office. There's about 10 or 12 of us on the council.
Good. Just a question. What is the purpose of this?
This is going to be the purpose of the committee will be to set up the framework for the program, compile the documents that will need to actually enact a TIF program for the town, which it has to go through the council here for approval, establishing where the TIF district is going to be in the town, and then eventually, once it's all set up, reviewing every application that comes in, determining that it meets the criteria for financing under the TIF program, and then once it passes our committee, then it goes to the town council for approval.
I think you weren't on council when
No,
we
I
got
wasn't.
the brief from the attorneys.
That's why I asked.
And Mark, can you, I had heard from legislators in Hartford say that they're getting additional emails from Mary with regards to, can we, I kind of want to throw that on the table and see about what's being written and just to, I think that the council should have a say in what's going on and what's being sent.
Sure. The first one she sent was simply passing up to Hartford the letter that you signed the other day. And then there was an email today, and she got a response from somebody asking a question that she responded to. I could send all three of the emails out. And then there was an issue that came up this afternoon where it was brought to our attention that the Office of Budget Management, Fiscal Management, misinterpreted something, and she sent a correction up, basically well, I'm not sure who asked them to change it. I have my suspicions, basically noting that now the new bill does no harm to the town. I'll be glad to send those out to the council tomorrow morning. Those are the three that went up. So sending up the letter that you all signed the other evening, the 8 of you signed, responding to a question that a legislator had, and then the correction that was brought to her attention today.
I mean, if the council is okay, I'd like to send a letter up to say that that we're working on negotiating in good faith with Oddfellows, and that we, we're still trying to get all of our facts together, and that we're not willing to say we want the legislation pulled yet, that we're still trying to figure this all out.
Okay, well, that's totally opposite of what the letter said.
Yep, I understand that.
But the inference that you've made is, I believe, in one of Mary's responses, it noted that we are continuing to have discussions with Oddfellows. So let me send you what.
Okay, and so if the council is okay, once we see the communication from Mary, if there's another letter that we want to send from the council saying the same thing, or supporting that line of thinking. Is everybody okay with that? Okay, all right. Someone want to move the minutes?
So moved.
Second.
We have a motion and a second to approve the minutes of January 3rd and April 11th. If there's no further discussion on those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, abstentions, that passes 8-0 to 0. The first item is 2017-0100, approving the FYE 2018 budgets. Hi Cindy, long time no see.
How are you all?
Good, thank you.
Tired.
I think Mark had passed out our revised memo from you that replaces the one that was in your council packet, because now that we have the meeting on Friday night, I have results on general fund also. The council has had several meetings where they have reviewed the proposed budget, the town manager proposed budget, have made some changes to it. There's some attachments on the end that give you some reconciliations of what has happened. But I'll just give you a brief recap of what has happened in the last few weeks. The proposed budget was $125 million, it was a 2.9% increase over 17, and would have required a 3.34 mill rate increase. Since the council has made adjustments to the budget, it has reduced it by $6 million, and it's now, excuse me, a 2.1% decrease from the 17 budget. And this would require a mill rate increase of 1.61. Prior to Friday night's meeting, when we restored, the funds were restored to the Board of Ed, we were at a 1.02, and now we're at a 1.61. Once the RTM has completed their review, we'll look at the revenues again, and I'll come back to you with final mill rates. And, excuse me, and the attachments you have the resolution and the 3 calculations of the mill rates. There's a reconciliation of the general fund that gives you the manager's budget and the additions and subtractions to come to the final budget. We started at 125 million, we're now at 119 million. There's a similar page for the CIP. We started at the 2.9 for general fund, 2.9, and we are now at 1.5 for the general fund and 1.3 for the water pollution controls, for a total of 2.917.
Excuse me, Cindy,
Oh,
where
sorry.
are you?
Oh, they're attached? Okay, the attachments are in your packet, I'm sorry. It was just the referral memo that he replaced. So I'll start over. You have the resolution, and then the approving the budgets, and then there's a resolution with the 3 mill rate calculations. And then we start with the reconciliation between the town manager, this page, and there's one that's very similar to it for the CIP. And those pages should be in your packet as attachments 1 through 4.
All we have is
This
comparison
is
by
my
fund.
attachment one.
Okay,
We have this, comparison by fund.
okay. I apologize for that. They should have been in there. I can make sure that you get these reconciliations. And there was also the comparison by function, which is the page that's also in your budget for the general fund and other funds. Okay. Do you want me to go and try to make copies?
Well, yeah, we could. I mean, those are the only attachments noted on this.
That was the original one.
No, I know
Oh,
that.
oh.
But the revised one,
Yes, is the memo, and that's, I apologize for that.
so,
Would
I'm
you like
sorry,
me-
so where were these located? Did I not copy them, print them out?
No, I'm wondering if they weren't attached. I think that might have been my mistake. Would you like me to make copies? Go and make copies and come back. Would you like me to make copies for these and come back?
Yes.
Yeah, probably, if we're going to be voting on it.
I will find a copy machine, and I will be back. If you give me 5 minutes.
Sure. What's that? I don't think we can't go to another item. Can we? All right. We'll go to 2017-0099, Information Technology Systems Administrator Job Description. Do we need Bob? Okay. Hi, Bob.
Hi, good afternoon.
Hi, Brian.
Hello. Okay, we on?
Yep.
Yeah, we were, basically, the resolution that we were looking for here, a referral, is just to upgrade a job description for the IT systems administrator. And there's not really any major changes. It's just a matter of getting some of our job descriptions updated, and this is one of the ones that we've felt was necessary, where we're working with the IT people. They had suggested some changes. It's a mission-critical position. It maintains a network, serves the services of switches, operators, firewall, emails, and its networks. Some of the infrastructure, as you know, we've been talking about it being aging, so it needs a closer watch, so we tried to put some of that in there also. And this position also basically monitors the hardware and makes sure it operates at peak efficiency. There's not a change in pay or anything like that, or benefits, and that's basically it. And I'd just like you to probably get into the 90,000 viruses and how that works.
Yeah, we installed our a newer firewall about 6 or 8 months ago, and this piece of equipment, it's called the Palo Alto, and we are roughly stopping about 90,000 attempts, hack attempts, phishing, bots, everything trying to come through this firewall to get to the town. And that's what this position programs, monitors, besides multiple other critical functions. Emails being another one.
Okay. And it was just description was changed. It wasn't, as you said, there's no salary change.
No, it's just a matter of making it the job description match what it really does now, because the last time it was approved was January, as you can see on there, 2008. And we're trying to make that one of the projects is that we start updating a lot of the older job descriptions so that we get up to where we should be.
Harry? And then Rich.
I'll move that we approve the job description as proposed.
We have
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Rich?
Yeah, I was just going to ask, do you have somebody that's filling this position now?
Yes.
Yes.
And he knows about, or she knows about the description?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah, there's currently someone in that position, and this is what they do day to day.
Great.
Did it change the qualifications any significant extent?
I don't think so, no. I would say not,
No.
really.
No, like, the actual qualifications are, we're upgrading to exactly what roughly they do today. But the new systems that we brought in over the last 8 or 9 years.
Dean?
All right, so bottom line, this just reflects what's already being done.
Correct.
Okay, nice. Anybody else? Seeing no further discussion, all those in favor, please raise your hand. Opposed? Abstentions? That passes 8 to 0 to 0.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Cindy?
And I apologize for this. I do not
No
believe I
worries.
sent these to the manager's office when Mark made the copies. Sorry. You're welcome.
No.
That's all I'm going to try on TV.
Thank you.
Excuse me.
Thank you.
15 minutes of fame. We're way past that. We're very famous.
Now that we have the attachments, attachment 1, actually, it's attachment 2, gives you the reconciliation of where we started with the budget of the 125 million, the additions with the education, the reductions that brought us down to the 119 million that the budget stands now. And then attachment 3 gives you the same format for the CIP, the starting budget and the adjustments that were made to the projects, and has an ending balance of 1.5 million and 1.3 million for the sewer projects, for a total of 2,917. And then the last attachment is what we call the summary of oh, I'm sorry.
It's 2917.
Mhm.
Is that the same as the 2988, or that?
It would have been, the 2988 was the contribution, it was going to be the contribution to the fund.
But so, does the sewer projects included in this upper
No,
number?
no, the sewer projects stand alone with the 1.3 million.
Okay.
That fund, the funding for that comes directly from the sewer
So
fund.
we cut about 1.4 million in.
And then the comparison by function gives it to you by area of service as well as function, and shows that 119,059,790 is the council's budget, and the manager's was 125, and that's the 2.1 reduction when compared to the fiscal 17. And then the second page of that is just for the other funds.
Thank you, Cindy.
So that's, I just have a
Yeah, go right ahead.
interesting that last year, the only department we didn't cut was planning, and this year they got the biggest cut, besides legislative policy and voter registration.
Well, I'm not, that's true, but there was a big increase last
Yeah.
year for a lot of initiatives
Yeah.
and so forth.
Just
so.
interesting.
And that cut is from what they requested, right?
Well, the column that you're looking at that shows, I think you're looking at,
The adjusted to town council
right,
percentages.
170,000. That's comparing the 17 to the council's budget. So his 17 budget was the 1.4.
Gotcha.
In the request. So
Yep.
that column just is comparing to 17.
Gotcha. Dean?
For the few people, I'm sure, I've run into some who have the notion that when we say that we've cut something or that we've level funded it, they imagine that our budget is done much the same as it is in Washington, where everybody gets an automatic 14%, I'm making up a number, automatic 14% raise in the figure, and then any cuts are really a decrease in the increase, but there's still an increase. When we're looking at our numbers, I think it bears repeating, when we're looking at our numbers, we are mostly cutting from actual dollars. We're not cutting back increases. We're actually, when we say we cut something, we cut something. Again, just for those people out there who may not understand how our budget's done, it is not like Washington. And I don't know what the state does. But we're dealing with real numbers, so.
Thank you. So, just so I make sure I understand, where we stand right now is a 1.5
1.61.
1.61 mil increase. If we find out, if the budget for the state is passed, and we received $5 million less in ECS funding than we did this year, that would be a 1.61 mil increase, right?
We
Right.
based it on anticipating a $5 million cut to the ECS
Right.
from the state for 18, and assuming that our level, we were going to get the same thing that we got in 17
Yep.
for all other revenues.
And the Board of Education cut from the number this year was it 1.5 million? Is that on here? It's got to be on here, right?
That was for their.
Education
Right, from their 17 budget?
was 1.7 million,
Yes.
right? Okay. So if we get, if the cut to the ECS funding is between 1.7 million and $1 or higher, theoretically, everything could stand. But if the ECS cut from the state is less than 1.7 million, then we would have to, based on the minimum budget requirement, potentially give the Board of Ed some money back.
I don't know, I can't say yes to that statement, because the calculation that they do for the minimum budget requirement starts with your adopted budget. But there are other factors in that formula that we don't have that add or subtract from that.
Okay. And then, I'm gonna go back to the 5 million as the number. If they only cut us 3 million, and we find out before we set the mill rate, then we can, for lack of better words, play games with the 2 million. We could apply it all to the general fund and reduce the mill rate. We could reinstate some of the CIP projects that we said we would wait until, and that goes for both the town and the school budget. We could theoretically put more money back into public works if we wanted to. We have that ability. Anything less than, if the cut is less than 5 million, to do that.
Right.
Right? But it would have to be found out before the RTM finishes, because once the mill rate is set after the RTM process, it can't be changed,
No,
right?
right.
Okay, so I want to make sure everyone understands, because I think it's important that, so if the, right now we're at a 1.61 mil increase.
Yes.
That could change if we find out that the cuts from the state are less before the RTM finishes. If we find out after the RTM finishes and the mill rate is set, that we may get more money than we anticipated, we can still do the things in the background that we wanted to, and we could potentially hold money in the general fund to apply to next year's budget, but we can't change the mill rate. The mill rate would be stuck at 1.61. Okay, thank you. Deb, and then,
So my question is the charter that dictates that we have to do
Yes.
this?
Yes, it's, the dates are set by charter.
What really happens if we break our charter? What if May 28th comes along and we've set the mill rate, and 2 weeks later, we find out that there's a pot of gold at the end of the rainbow? I mean, what are the consequences? I'm just asking, out of pure curiosity.
Well, I think if we find out what Hartford is doing before the RTM finishes, the RTM is in a position to make those adjustments. They can't exceed either the council's number or the manager's number, whichever is highest. But they, through their process, could add money back. So I hope that I hope that the state finishes its budget, and I wasn't necessarily going to read this tonight. I sent it all to you a little while ago. You may have seen it. It was a CCM legislative update. There's the 2 items they're talking about, but one of them that we've been waiting for is concerning the Appropriations Committee. And the Appropriations Committee fails to vote on budget. And that was, I guess, yesterday. And then the conclusion, which isn't highlighted at all, says, it appears unlikely that the committee, the Appropriations Committee, will convene to reconsider a budget before their Thursday's deadline. Everybody's sitting down. In the upcoming months, negotiations between the legislative leaders and the governor's office will take place to determine the fate of the budget. How or why, and now it's months as opposed, I don't know. And that could be a mistake, but I don't think so. And we'll try to get some clarification tomorrow, but just reading this on the surface, the concerns that we're talking about, or the hopeful expectations that we'll know something before we set a mill rate, doesn't seem to be borne by this latest update from CCM. So I'm not quite sure, don't have enough detail here to know what happened in the Appropriations Committee, why they didn't even have a vote on it. I mean, that just suggests to me there's a lot of division still.
I think they didn't have the votes.
Sorry?
I think Kathy Austin didn't have the votes, so she pulled the vote. That's what I heard.
So it goes Dean, and then Harry, and then Greg, and then Bonnie.
You can pass me for a moment because I'm trying to remember my
Then
question.
we'll go to Harry.
What's the answer to Deb's question? What if we break the rules and change our mill rate because we get a windfall, or whatever? I mean,
Harry won't.
I look at the charter as a constitution. You shouldn't be breaking the rules. Because I don't know how that would then get interpreted by the RTM if you're doing something different than what the RTM does, and they are the final decider. I mean, that may require some conversation with the RTM. There has been talk that Hartford may provide some flexibility to towns to basically follow the same process to reconsider their budget. But as we talked about a few weeks ago, from a practical standpoint, we really do need to have a budget by the end of June. We barely have funding available in the general fund for 1 month's worth of operations between the town and the Board of Ed, subdivisions, outside agencies, and so forth. So I think getting some relief to August or September from a practical standpoint doesn't help us. We don't have money to fund the operations.
Greg?
So let's say the RTM sets the mill rate by the statutory date, and we find out we get cut $9 million instead of $5. So is our only option to issue supplemental tax bills, or can we still cut from our budget?
Well, I think you could always do supplemental tax bills. That's not where I would recommend you start. As we've talked previously, I mean, that happened to some degree a couple years ago where town operations just tightened its belt in August, I believe it was, and put a freeze on around $600,000. Certainly, we're talking very different numbers here, but that was town operations. That was not Board of Ed. But I believe under that scenario, we would, working with the council, we just kind of did that on our own at staff level. I think an order of magnitude of $2 or $3 or $4 million would certainly warrant, council and RTM input. If there is any good news, if you know that in August and September, at least you have 8, 9, 10 months to make adjustments. The worst case scenario is, we don't know what's going on until February or May. I mean, we had a situation this year where the state we knew that they were holding back on something, but they didn't actually make a decision until, I forget, a month or two ago.
Yeah.
And it was, in fact, the $200 and something thousand that the Board of Ed mentioned the other evening, that, it was ECS funding that got cut, and they made an adjustment, and they had talked to the council about that a while ago, a couple months ago, a month and a half ago, whatever. But if, I think we'd be looking at both, Greg, but I would, I think the first course of action is sending out supplemental tax bills. Communities do that. That's not a very desirable thing to do.
From a cost standpoint, it would cost us, our budget.
I mean, you do
Our
have
budget
the
couldn't absorb
ability
it.
to temporarily tap into the fund balance. I'm not recommending that, but that would between a combination of tapping into the fund balance, and we would certainly let the bond rating agencies know, and I'm sure they would understand, but I think they would have very high expectation that we're gonna replenish those dollars during next year's budget. But I think a combination of that and kind of self-imposed constraints, hiring freezes, pulling back on some things, maybe canceling some additional CIPs, maybe pulling money from the capital reserve that wouldn't be spending on CIPs. I think there's a combination of things that could be done.
So Cindy, I have a question for you. I'm a little bit confused. I'm pretty good at math, but I can't get grasp my hand around this. So we were assuming $5 million cut to the budget
5 million in revenue.
for the
Yes.
ECS cuts.
Yes, that's
And
what the
we
revenue is
made a
based on.
decision to split it with the Board of Ed. And we took about 1.6 mil out of the town, and originally 3.4 out of Board of Ed. And then we restored money the other night. So if you add when we originally split it, it added up to 5 million.
5.2 million was the first cut to the Board of Ed, was 5.2 million.
That was over the requested. That's a completely different number. That's a different number.
Okay.
That's not what I'm talking about.
Okay.
I'm talking about the 5 million that we are presuming. The 5.2 was Dr. Grenier's requested budget. That's completely different. Originally, we came out and we split it 26%. We used the town manager's number, and then we changed our math and came back on Friday with a different number. But those numbers added up to 5 million. But now what we've cut out of the town, out of that 5 million, and what we cut out of Board of Ed, it doesn't add up to 5 million. It's less than 5 million. So our presumed cut is less than 5 million. So I don't really understand where that difference is.
I think part of the confusion is in maybe some of your minds, you were focusing in on the 5 million. The delta in terms of dollars between the proposed budget, the revenues, and comparing it to last year was closer to $12 million. Okay, the 5 million was simply an arbitrary
Right.
number for a scenario.
Right.
And I do recall a discussion at one of the meetings about 26%, you know, as town operations and everything else was the Board of Ed. I remember that. But I think you're better off to look at the proposed number for the Board of Ed and the proposed number for the town, because that's what the cuts are being
Okay.
reflected here.
I'm just, in my
And it's-
head, if we get
It's $6
cut
million.
5 million, we didn't do that really to the budget exactly.
Well, you cut 6
Yeah, we
million.
did. We cut
Yeah.
6,777,000.
But I mean, it's not dollar for dollar. We didn't use.
And I think part of that, to me, I think we're better off to talk to the bottom line number,
Okay,
not
all right.
some, how are we gonna divvy up the ouch from the state? Because now you're keeping another set of numbers that, to be honest with you, except for that one statement made at that meeting, I really didn't hear the council talk a lot about how they were gonna divvy up the $5 million. I do remember the discussion about 26% and 74% for everything else, which I do remember that discussion, but there's also outside subdivisions, outside
Right.
agencies and contingency and so forth, that potentially some of that cut should have been.
I just want, if we get restored funding, that we make sure we take the town into account and fairly.
Rich? Yeah, I just want to recap to what you said, Mark. If we get a cut of 9 million, there's certain things we have to do. And since, you know, you're leaving in a month and a half or 2 months, we should have all this stuff written down so that we don't have to rethink these things. We can just go into it and start to look where we can get the money from.
I could certainly put a memo together.
Yeah.
You know, I'm sure whatever other scenarios we can think of, whatever happens in Hartford will be different. And, you know, first of all, we'll when the RTM's done with the budget, it will come back to the council. All of the revenue assumptions will be updated.
Yes.
We'll be 3 months smarter than we were on or about March 1st, because we'll have 3 months more of actual receipts in hand. So there, you know, it is, at this point, it's as accurate as it can be, but it will be more accurate in a month. And, you know, we'll know for sure whether or not the state's doing something. Hopefully, they don't go dark in Hartford for the next 2 months. That we'll get some sense of what's going on in Hartford. But you know, you can always send out a supplemental tax bill. I certainly would not recommend that. You can, you know, look at other fund balances, which sometimes the council has looked at. You can cancel CIPs, you can put freezes. I mean, there's a whole bunch of things, but I think what has to happen early on is the council and the RTM need to kind of decide how are you going to share the gain. Because I do remember this council a number of months ago suggesting, once we knew what was going on in Hartford, that, you know, it was all going to be on the Board of Ed, and that clearly has not happened. So we would need some direction. I don't want to do, I would prefer not to do what we did a couple years ago when we realized there was a revenue problem and it was only the town that came to the table.
Bonnie, I'm sorry, Greg.
So I made it pretty clear Friday night that if it was more than what we anticipated, that I wanted all the balance to go to the Board of Ed if we got cut more ECS. And nobody disagreed with me on that, so that's how I'm interpreting it.
Nobody agreed. Well, go ahead, Greg. and
Nobody
then go ahead,
said
Pete.
anything.
We probably don't know the answer to this, but what type of format would the reconsideration be in? Would the town council meet again, deliberate, talk about reductions, and then that would go to the RTM and they would do what they do normally during the budget season? Or would it be a collaborative group effort, or don't we know?
I think that's a new territory. I would like to think it is collaborative, so it's just not either pitting town operations against the Board of Ed or the town council against the RTM. I think we would need to get everybody together and with a couple of different scenarios for you to consider. You know, you've approved, everybody's approved the budget at that point, but we don't have the funding. We don't have the money. I mean, you know, it's a pretty simple proposition, except there has to be a willingness of people working together.
Right.
And I'm sure that can happen. Once, you know, I think that unfortunately, the biggest problem right now we're all facing is the uncertainty. I mean, even if you buy into the one of the scenarios, you're always going to have people, it's come up at some of the committee meetings with the RTM. They, you know, depending on where you're coming from, poo-poo the second scenario, people are assuming the worst, or people are assuming the best. And I think it's very unfortunate that we're stuck in this situation. I mean, it's bad enough that there may be a big cut, but to not know if it's 0 or $14 million and trying to have 169 towns try to do their work in a timely manner according to their charters or according to an ordinance or whatever, because one entity can't get its act together, I think is very unfortunate.
I wish I had the book in front of me, but the amount to be raised from property taxes, the 85 million and change.
I have my book if you want it.
Cool. Except the book would provide an outline for me. I don't actually need the book itself. I've got the lines, but, so need it. The 85, 102, 931, how much of that is the first line, the 4110, for example? How much is the second line? In other words, is this the total figure? Does this include interest and back taxes, or just the first two lines?
The 85, 102, 931, that would be just current taxes.
Just current taxes, the first line?
Right, the 4110, yes.
Okay, thank you. That would mean that, so last year's number, the adjusted number is, I don't know if you have that in front of you.
The 80,948,393.
Right, okay, so basically we're going from the 80 million to the 85 million. That's the leap, the jump, the step, or whatever you want to call it. All right, thank you.
Anybody else? Okay, I'm sorry, Deb.
The only thing I'd like to comment on is we do have a charter revision commission that's in process right now. And I think it's pretty important that this is one of the items that we bring to their table, that I really think the timeline of when we do our budget and deliberations needs to be a little more in line with what the state does. Because if we don't do something to try to fix our timeline, to get on a better timeline with what the state is, we're gonna be guessing every single year. So I just kind of want to put that out there as a general thought, that it's something that we should probably bring to them to discuss and possibly look at. I don't know how that transition would work, and I know we've had this for a very, very long time, and I don't know if it's possible, but I just think it's something that we should take a look at.
I completely agree with her.
I would just like to add to that, that it takes, from the time the mill rate is set, it takes about 2 to 3 weeks to get the grand list and the tax bills out. So if we were to delay that, and we didn't set a mill rate until the end of June, then the tax bills wouldn't go out until the end of July, and really it's the end of August before we'd really get the bulk of the money, because that's when the banks pay. Most of it comes in at the end of the month. So there would be like that 2-month delay where we would be cash strapped.
Right, and I understand that part. I'm just saying, it's not gonna happen overnight, but if we know that this is something that might be coming down the line, you know, we can obviously try to plan better. And if it's building up our piggy bank, or building up the general fund, or whatever the case may be, it just seems like it would ease some of this conversation, because we would have a much clearer idea of what revenue is coming in, and it kind of avoids a lot of this guessing. But yes, it would take planning, and
a lot of
we would
planning.
probably have to plan for about 2 months. That's what I was kind of guessing at this stage, but I mean, it's just a thought, and if there is any, you know, idea about it being changed, now is the time to do it while the charter is available for us to possibly modify. That's all I was saying, but yes.
I do agree. The last couple of years with the state has been just so much uncertainty on the revenue side. It's been very difficult, 2 very difficult budget years.
I mean, we're playing the shell game. It's terrible. It's a
And
terrible
even when
place
we,
to be.
even when we based it on the governor's budget, and then as Mark said, a few months later, they started making cuts again.
Mark, and then Bonnie.
Yeah, I just want to make sure that you're not suggesting at all that we come up with a different fiscal year. Or are you talking more about having some ability to go back and revisit some of the things that Craig was asking about, and/or delaying if a couple weeks or a month or so would buy us a better end result? Because the reason I'm asking about the fiscal year, there is this kind of growing attitude in Hartford that, well, the 169 towns should change their fiscal year so the state can do their budget, which I personally made reference to that a few minutes ago. I find that unbelievable. I find that incredibly arrogant, that because one entity can't figure out what they're doing, that 169 cities and towns have to the thought was, it's our fault that we have the budget year that we have. And so I just want to make sure, if that's what you are thinking, that's fine. I just want to make sure I understand.
So, can I?
Yeah.
So, I mean, I was possibly entertaining the idea, yes. If that means changing our fiscal year, or if we just have to change the dates of our budget discussions too, you know, I guess it's, yes, shame on them. I agree with you. They shouldn't make us, because they change, because they can't make, you know, their minds up fast enough. But at the same time, I guess it's just more of a proactive, responsible choice for us as, you know, the fiscal policy makers, and, you know, doing the right thing for the citizens, for us, instead of trying to hit a moving target we have something that's a little more accurate. So it is a double-edged sword, and I'm not saying that we shouldn't take the obligation off of the state because they can't get their act together fast enough. I guess it's, like I was saying, it's just more of a proactive part on us. What can we do? Is it possibly something we can do? And, it's an opportunity to make things a little bit easier for us moving forward and being able to budget properly and more responsibly for all of us and our citizens.
I was thinking we would change our fiscal year. And I brought it up a couple months ago at the council meeting, and, if we did it, we would have to change our fiscal year, because you got to get the bills out. But I don't really see, the transition year would be painful, but I don't see why it would be that hard to do. We'd know what money we had.
Just a question to Mark. CCM, certainly all the other towns are in the same position as we are. And I would think CCM would kind of coordinate some kind of a solution to this problem with all the other towns. Everybody must have the same problem we have, and...
Essentially, yes. Those towns that don't have charters, and there's many towns that don't have charters, I'm sure we've all heard that, East Lyme and I think Stonington, there's been discussion in the paper, I believe, that, they're going to hold their votes later. But they still need to hold their votes so they have a budget in place for July 1st, because everybody's fiscal year starts July 1st, but they do have a little bit more flexibility than we would, according to our charter. Now, the state, last year, as is pointed out in the budget message, the state did approve some legislation last year, which my read is that it's in effect until the end of this June. Mm-hmm. It was really for last year's budget situation, but the date runs through the end of this June that would allow us, it says something to the effect of, following the prescribed procedures that are in your charter, you except for the dates, you could make modifications, in this particular case, up until June 30th, or reconsider. I don't, in talking to the town attorney, I think from a practical standpoint, if you have to exactly follow the same procedures that our charter lays out, that the council has so many days and the RTM has so many days, you can't make it work. But I think a reasonable interpretation would be, instead of the council spending a month reviewing the budget, you have a meeting or two, make whatever adjustments you think are necessary, then pass it on to the RTM. And instead of the RTM spending a month re-reviewing the budget in 8 or 9 meetings, have a meeting or two and come to the conclusion with the eye that, the tax bills still need to go out on or about July 1st. Maybe you could grab a week or two. And so that relief, I believe, exists in state statute right now, but I think all of what we're talking about is more relief than that. And so CCM, because all towns aren't in the same position, some towns have charters, some towns do not, one size doesn't fit all.
Was anybody, Karen?
I just wanted to let the council know, I've been following the Charter Revision Commission. I've been reading their minutes and attending meetings when possible, and I do know that the time frame for the whole budget process is something that they are very much looking into. The last time it was discussed, when I was at one of their meetings, they were looking at a handoff to the council by the end of February for the budget by the town manager, and then the town council would go through the budget during the month of February, and it would go to the RTM the beginning of March. So they were speeding the whole process up. Since then, they've also are doing this whole thing with the Board of Finance, which is going to be involved, but they are very much aware that the process needs to begin sooner and needs to be completed, and so they are working on
It sounds like we're saying just the opposite, though. It sounds like we're saying it needs to be delayed so that we can get the revenue numbers from the state. So it's an interesting play on what they're doing. Dean?
Yeah, that was what I was thinking. If we hurry up and wait, that doesn't change what the state does. The state's, let's assume that the state will perennially come up with their number, a number we can rely on in July. We'll always be saying, gee, I wish we didn't have to send our bills out July 1st so we can start getting money. If only we could, for example, shift our fiscal year over, that way we'd have a clearer picture, et cetera. So no matter what we do to speed up our process, we're still not going to know. We're either going to be busy in April and May, or we will have finished it all in February. We're still waiting for the state number.
Yeah. Okay. Thanks, Cindy.
You're
We're
welcome.
gonna move on
Okay.
to
And again, sorry for not having those in your packets.
computation of tax rate, 2017-0101 for general fund. We need to read, we need to read this.
Yes, we do.
Greg, you want to read this?
Which one is it?
It is
101, 0101.
computation of tax rate for general fund. It's the, yep,
I think you have to still read the approving budgets, this first section.
okay.
Right here.
Attachment 1.
Yeah.
Resolution approving budgets for fiscal year commencing July 1st, 2017 and ending June 30th, 2018. Resolved that the budgets for the various funds here and after set forth and hereby approved and adopted, and the amounts on the total appropriation line are hereby appropriated for the functions specified, and the amounts listed under the heading Financing Plan are hereby established as the approved budget estimates for the type of revenues specified, and include all estimated fiscal year 2018 cash revenues except fiscal year 2018 current property taxes, which will be estimated for budget purposes by separate resolution when the fiscal year 2018 tax rate is set. And further, that a complete detailed document indicating all function appropriations is hereby made as a part of the record and shall be submitted to the town clerk for public record for the budgets as follows. The Golf Course Fund, Sewer Operating Fund, Solid Waste Fund, Mumford Cove Special Taxing District, Reevaluation Fund, Recreation and Senior Activities Fund, Borrow IT Connecticut, Sewer District Fund, Fleet Reserve Fund, Technology Replacement Fund, and Human Services Assistant Fund. I so move.
Second?
Yeah, there's a, hold on, I think you missed, there's an updated one where there's general and capital reserve fund.
I move to amend the motion to include the general fund and the capital reserve fund.
Great.
That was part of the handout on the back of Cindy's memo.
We have a second to amend the motion.
Second.
Great. We have a motion and a second to amend. Any discussion? All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Abstentions? The motion is amended 7-0. All those in favor of the motion as amended, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Abstentions? That passes 7-0. Thank you. Bonnie, do you want to take the next one?
Sure. Resolution computing a tentative tax rate for FY fiscal year 2018 to pay. Am I doing Mumford Cove or the general fund?
General fund.
Expenses, appropriations approved in the general fund budget as adopted by the town council. Whereas the town council adopted on April 26, 2017, a general fund budget providing for expenditures, appropriations, or expenses totaling $119,059,790, and estimated cash revenues exclusive of fiscal year 2018 current property taxes totaling $32,923,775. Be it resolved that the tax rate of 23.34 mils is hereby determined as required by Chapter 9 of the Groton Town Charter and based on the following computations. Total general fund appropriations per budget approved by council, $119,059,790, less general fund cash receipts exclusive of fiscal year 2018 property taxes, $32,923,775, less the amount to be appropriated from the unassigned fund balance, $1,033,084. Amount to be raised from property taxes, $85,102,931. Amount computed as follows: $85,102,931 divided by the new assessed evaluation after Board of Assessment adjustments of $3,705,520,790 divided by 98.4% collection rate multiplied by 1,000 equals 23.34 mill rate. I so move.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Any further discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Abstentions? 7 to 0 to 1. Rich, can you do the Mumford, is it Mumford code?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Resolution computing tentative tax rate for the fiscal year ending 2018 to pay expenses, appropriations approved in the Mumford Code Special Taxing District Fund budget as adopted by the Town Council. Whereas the Town Council adopted on April 26, 2017, a Mumford Cove District Fund balance budget providing for expenditures, appropriations, or expense totaling $21,028 and an estimated cash revenue exclusive of FYE 2017 current property taxes totaling 0. Resolved that a tax rate of 0.34 mils is hereby determined as required by Chapter 9 of the Groton Town Charter and based on the following computations. Total Mumford Cove District Fund appropriations per budget approved by the council, $21,028. Less estimated amount to be appropriated from unassigned fund balance, 0. Less cash receipts exclusive of current property taxes, 0. Amount to be raised from property taxes, $21,028. Amount computed as follows: $21,028 divided by the net assessed value of $62,627,285 after Board of Assessment adjustments divided by 99.7% collection rate multiplied by 1,000 equals 0.34 mils. I so move.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Is there any further discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Abstentions? That passes 8 to 0 to 0. Dean, can you do the sewer district part?
Sewer. I'll play Ed Norton.
Ed Norton.
Ralphie.
I got that.
I do too.
You know, there was somebody that worked for the New York City Bureau of Sewers named Ed Norton. Saw that one. No kidding. Resolution computing a tentative tax rate for fiscal year ending 2018 to pay expenses, also known as appropriations, approved in the Groton Sewer District Fund budget as adopted by the Town Council, whereas the Town Council adopted on April 26, 2017, a Groton Sewer District Fund budget providing for expenditures, appropriations, or expenses totaling $834,176, an estimated cash revenue exclusive of fiscal year ending 2018 current property taxes totaling $11,000, be it resolved that a tax rate of 0.27 mils is hereby determined as required by Chapter 9 of the Groton Town Charter and based on the following computations. Total Groton Sewer District Fund appropriations per budget approved by Council, $834,176. Less estimated amount to be appropriated from unassigned fund balance, $200,000. Less cash receipts exclusive of current property taxes, $11,000. And that yields the amount to be raised from property taxes, $623,176. Amount computed as follows: $623,176. Strike that. $623,176. I'm cold. Divided by net assessed valuation of $2,375,069,727 after Board of Assessment adjustments and excludes motor vehicles, divided by the 98.8% collection rate multiplied by 1,000 equals 0.27 mils. I so move.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Any further discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Abstentions? That passes 8 to 0 to 0. Thanks, Cindy.
Thank you very much.
Thanks for all your work.
Oh, sure. And yours too.
That brings us to 2017-0006, labor negotiations, potential executive session. And I think we do need to go in because we're going to be discussing the steel workers as well. So,
I do have. This is the motion on the other side, is if the council approves it.
Okay. I hereby move that the Town Council Committee of the Whole, along with the Town Manager, Mark R. Ofinger, Human Resources Director, Rob Stragami, and Town Attorney Eileen Dugan, go into executive session for the purpose of discussing strategy and/or negotiations with respect to current and pending collective bargaining with multiple bargaining units. This action is taken without prejudice to the council's right to discuss these matters in a private meeting pursuant to Connecticut General Statutes, paragraph 1-200, parenthesis 2. I so move.
Second.
We have a motion in several seconds. All those in favor, if there's no more discussion, say aye. Aye. Opposed? Abstentions? That passes 8-0. We are in executive session. Thank you. We're back and better than ever. Hi, Gary.
Hello.
So you found some violations?
No.
Are you just kidding about that?
So we're doing Virgin support?
Yes.
All right.
I'm here to report on the informational meeting that was held on March 22nd, 2017, where 39 residents had attended the public information meeting on the proposed change to Virginia's court project. The memo that you have, or the referral that you have, is a fairly large packet. It includes the history of the project. We had the public information meeting. 39 residents had attended that public informational meeting, and all but one spoke in opposition. It also includes a copy of the petition signed by 481 residents who are opposed to that to the project. I've also attached some of the accident reporting that was used as part of the project. Also some correspondence from DOT. And if this project is to continue, there is a resolution that the town council must pass, and then a letter that Mark must send up to the DOT. Just briefly on the project itself, the town for years has looked up and down Route 12, Route 1 for traffic management issues to get traffic flowing either smoother or quicker through the area, or to reduce traffic accidents at major intersections throughout the town. We have looked up and down on Route 12. The state did a project on Route 117 and Route 1 years ago. And what we did is, when we were looking through the accident records that were provided by the police department, this intersection came up as one of our largest, or one of the areas that had the largest number of accidents. As we were going through the project has been approved by the town council and the RTM and the CIP for several years. We were looking for other funding sources in 2014, and what came up was that there was a program from the state DOT, which was the Federal Local Accident Reduction Program. And we applied for that funding. So what that project did, through authorization from the town council, what we did is we gathered all the accident data together. It went to the COG, the Council of Governments. They rated it, of all the applications, they rated it fairly high, and was passed on to the DOT. The DOT traffic engineers took a look at all the accidents that were there and all of the other criteria that they did for reviewing projects as such, and had awarded the grant dollars for us to start the design work. The design was done internally through my town engineer, through the town's town engineer, and that was reviewed by the DOT. Now, part of the process was to bring it up to a point in the design where we could have a public information meeting of what we were planning, or what the plan was to do to that, to the intersection. What it would do, it would dead end the court. It would still provide a hard surface, a vehicle emergency access area through it. There'd be a crosswalk in the area, but what it would do is take all the vehicle turning movements and all the vehicles entering or exiting that court onto Route 1, take that driveway entrance away. That was presented to the public at the meeting there, and what I had heard, and if I could group them together into some major points, is one is that the residents felt that the emergency access was an issue. That if we would close that down, it would add seconds, and seconds during an emergency, getting an ambulance into that area of town, that section of thing, would just be unacceptable. The Peconic Bridge Fire Chief also made comments that even though that there would be a hard surface where his vehicles could go over, his concern was, and from his previous jobs throughout the region, is that these emergency accesses usually aren't upkept well, that maybe in the winter you pile snow there and the truck couldn't get through. Or people start using them for parking in the neighborhood, and during any emergency, you couldn't get a fire, a piece of apparatus through, and by the time you get it towed, seconds are minutes for an emergency. So there was that issue from the neighbors and also the Peconic Bridge Fire Department through the chief of the emergency access, of taking one access away from that neighborhood. There was an issue that they're speeding down the road, down Route 1, which is that just people are just going too fast down that section, either leaving the schools or just trying to make the light coming down that area. There's also some concern is that the state DOT just, within the last year, line striped the area, so now there are really 2 lanes going westward towards Town Hall. And that's because there's a dedicated, there is a signal on the light for the right-hand turn arrow. So they had marked off a little bit further back 2 lanes. The residents felt that that was just invited people to speed by. One lane stays stopped, one lane is proceeding, people are moving out of the driveways, and that was an issue there. They wondered why the traffic study was done in 2004 and why wasn't it updated. Traffic studies aren't updated every time. For a project this small, they're usually updated if there's a change in a traffic generator in the area. Years back, the parking lot was used by the Mashantucket Peak lots. That generated a lot more traffic in the neighborhood. If that was taken, if that would be added back in, or if there'd be other businesses in the back. So there wasn't a major change in the traffic generators in that area, so the traffic study wasn't done. Redoing the traffic study does cost money. The issues that was brought up there is that the crosswalk itself was not well, the area was not well lit, or the crosswalk was not well lit. There's a street light on every utility pole up and down Route 1 from Town Hall all the way to Ring Drive and even further. So there is no other place that we can put a street light on. In fact, one of the poles on the north side of the crosswalk there are actually 2 lights. 2 street lights, one that faces the residents, one that faces, the street, and one faces the businesses.
Are they LED deals?
Not yet.
Sorry.
Not yet.
Those are Groton Utilities?
Groton Utilities lights.
Would LED be lighter?
No, not really.
Can you make them lighter?
You can put a larger, you can put a floodlight in there, you could do that, but if you take a look at the businesses and all the lights we have down there, I don't know if any more lighting would help in the traffic movement. So we did present that. We took minutes of the meetings. Those are in the council's packages. The neighborhood had voiced an opinion. The people who did attend is that they do not want this project to proceed. Now, and the last thing is that the neighborhood, I forgot this, didn't know of the project until it was just happening, meaning that the design was brought forward and all that stuff. Well, the town council and the RTM had approved this project several times, and through public meetings and that through the public meetings that we had for the budget. But I also explained to the neighborhood, and we also went to the NRZ, which is a neighborhood group down there. They haven't met in a while, but I kept our staff member from the planning department fully informed on the project. What I did tell the residents there is that we needed to present something to them. So the project was authorized, the funding, the grant requires us to do this, that this is part of the public information period of time, that we needed to hold this public information meeting to get your input, the public's input, and then bring that back to the town council. So that in a very small nutshell is what we did and what's happened.
What about this email about someone suggesting it be one way? Did you talk about that at the meeting?
That was one thing that the DOT would look at, and I do believe they were what I would feel it would be one-way right-hand turn out. So people leaving the court would need to go to Mystic and not downtown Groton. And it would be right-hand turn in and right-hand turn in. What this would do is you would have to geometrically change that intersection to try to get that to happen. And we do have one of those on Route, I just think of one of those, no, we have two of those on Route 1. One by Walgreens and one by Groton Shoppers Mart. The Mall Inc. And if you
Where's
take a
the
look.
other one?
Mall Inc., it's right across from
It's the.
Sleepy's. Mattress firm now. And they're supposed to be on that lane. You make a right-hand turn in, there's more people that stop in the left lane on the opposing side and make this wiggy turn to get in there because they're just going to do it. So it is very hard. Same thing up at Walgreens. If you're up there, you see some of the most convoluted turns to try to get into that driveway. So unless it really is a physical barrier down, it's probably won't get accepted. So that'd be one thing that the state would look at, but I don't, my feeling is in that location, it will not work because we don't have a median, we can't put a median barrier in, that would keep the people from crossing over.
There is a median there at that light.
At the light, but
It's a
not as
little.
far back as the court.
You couldn't take it all the way back?
Well, we could, but then there's some of the issues from the neighborhood, is we are blocking that off, we're blocking their turning movements out, leaving the neighborhood and going to downtown Groton, not going to Mystic and then trying to do a U-turn someplace to come back.
Well, if
It's
they wanted to
fairly
go
different.
downtown Groton, they could go out the other road that they'd have to access if,
There's two other entrances, or two other entrance exits.
Yeah, Gary, I'm against this project. There was 400 or 500 people signing the petition. You had a public meeting, and I understood it turned into a Donnybrook, from what I was told. And I had a number of conversations with Chief Winsky about the safety of this, and I think that signage could be done better. Colors on the curbing could be done better. The crosswalk could be properly illuminated with the proper paint. It's not well painted right now. And the signage could indicate, that the speed limit is 25 miles an hour. School crossing is right down, there's a school there. And, according to the traffic book, they could probably come up with another signage. And I think it's important to understand that a lot of the people that signed that petition truly don't want it. And they're aware of they're aware that it is an area that is a little bit congested possibly at times, and there's, and people do come around 117 when there's accidents up on 95, and they try to, I guess, speed through to go to Allen Street. We have to live with this. But I think, we have other things to do in the town besides going after Vicenda's court.
If I can just make a comment, I was at the meeting. The residents were passionate. That's not Donnybrook. There was nothing, no one had a fear of anything. So the residents were passionate, which was really, it was really refreshing. Even though I was on the receiving end of it, they weren't going after me, they were going after the project. So
Yeah,
it
they
was
were going
refreshing
after the
that we had
project.
residents out that spent the night with us, an hour and a half with us.
Yeah.
So it was refreshing. It was the neighborhood came out. Signage could be one thing. It is already, there's the signs are there for the crosswalk at Harry Day Drive. There's the school signs already on both, because there's school zone, flashing lights, one to the west of Route 117, one to the east of, it's right in front of the Paquonic Plain Park. So we have all this. The crosswalk could be relined, striped a little brighter, but it's there. So some signage would be there. There's so many signs there now, it's maybe a little
And
difficult.
to put the LED lights may be a problem for that area.
It's
'Cause it'll-
something, so, I mean, there's a couple of things that we could look at that does not include, this was, we left the pedestrian crossing there. When the project was going to dead end the court, the pedestrian crossing was still there because we understood that there was the need to get from the neighborhood from there. This was to address the vehicular accidents, and yes, somebody died there. There was a fatality there of a car versus a pedestrian, which was, it's very serious, but we were looking at the number of vehicle accidents. Some of those things could be done. whether the state would pay for them or not, we'd have to bump that up to the state level.
Dean?
All right. If it wasn't for the fact that there are people against this thing, if it was just me playing Sim City, I'd say, geez, it's a bad intersection, let's do something about that. That's the engineering hat, the planning hat. But there are quite a few signatures, including Rich's, by the way.
Thank you.
Saw that one. Not all residents of Groton, but it doesn't matter. There are quite a few from that area. And I'll presume that they represent genuine opposition, not just somebody who'll sign anything. There are always a couple of those. But I am aware from speaking to a couple of people that there is opposition. Now, when they were told, when they learned of the project is not as material to me, because it sounds like they've made up their minds, whether they knew then or knew now. They've made up their minds they're not crazy about the project, and I would have to say, just make an executive decision, unless this thing is a killing zone. And I know that there was a fatality there, and I know that there are accidents there, and I know this is probably a problem intersection. But I can think of other intersections in town where there's been a fatality, and something was done, there was a little island put in or something, or maybe nothing was done. So, I don't want to make light of the fatality. Maybe the proposed project would see to it that there were no more fatalities there. I don't know. There'd still be a crosswalk there. There's still opportunity for people going down Route 1 to hit somebody. So I'm afraid that we're just going to have to watch where we walk and watch how we drive. But right now, I'm thinking, on balance, not my top priority, and I would be with Rich on this one. I'd wait on it.
Karen?
I guess my question would be, how is this any different than Allen Street?
It's not.
You know, when the state decided that they needed to put up a big new signage on 95 to direct everyone to get off at Allen Street to go into downtown Mystic, we were faced with a sea of people, all residents of Mystic and Allen Street, who did not want it. And this is no different. The people who live in Pequannock Bridge do not want this. They see it as an inconvenience and unnecessary, and I have trouble supporting it.
Great.
Yeah, it does seem a lot similar. And why has it started in 2004, I guess, as a CIP? Is that correct? Is it generally just trying to get the funding that took so long, or there has been?
It was the funding for the traffic study, and then just normal budgeting things. It didn't rise to the top for the funding of the projects that we had. And then we looked for other funding resources, other funding, other grants, and this grant came available. Project was still doable, and we went to the town council. So the delta in between there was just funding.
And how much have we spent so far?
On the traffic study, I can tell you how much money that has been allocated and reserved for. It's $118,000 out of our local CIP project. We would only pay, if we got this, if the project continued, our match would be about $27,000. The traffic study, I do believe, was in the neighborhood of $12,000 to $15,000. I could find that number, but it's been a while back. But the engineering's been done in-house, so there's been no out-of-pocket expenses for that.
So we have $27,000 on our current CIP for this?
We have actually $118,000 in the LoSiP, which is the CIP, our capital project.
Bonnie?
Well, being the one person that voted for Allen Street, I would say, I think that this intersection should be looked at as a right-hand turn and a right-hand turn out only, and extend that piece, the divider down further so that you couldn't go. It's gonna get worse if we get the money for the 2020 school, because there's gonna be another middle school up there. The traffic is gonna be increased, and I appreciate the people who live in Virgin's Court, but we also have to protect people from getting injured.
Thanks, Bonnie. Dean?
There is a distinction with Allen Street. There is a distinction. I'm not on the mic. It doesn't matter. And that is this. This is a relatively minor project, in terms of funding, in terms of the actual engineering, in terms of the construction. It's a fairly routine thing. What makes it hot is the people who live there. Most of the people who live there aren't keen on it. Allen Street, if you take the neighbors' involvement out of it, even if everybody was in favor of it, was a nutty idea. I don't mean to fight that with support. What I mean is the concept was not well thought out. The state was just saying, what kind of lettering do you want on the signs? What they were really getting into was spending millions of dollars they'd have to do that, to put traffic signals into that intersection, 95 and 89. I don't think they anticipated that. So I think that's a much different affair. We'd have to turn 89 into something like 90, for example, to handle the traffic that people wanted directed off that exit. So I see that as a difference. But in terms of people don't want it, there's a similarity there.
Well, the difference between Allen Street, I mean, it is similar that people were angry, but on Allen Street, it wasn't an issue of public safety. It was economic development and trying to get people to come down into Groton on that side of the river.
Well, interesting, because
And
you're
this
right,
is
you're
a
right
public safety issue.
Yeah, the opposition to Allen Street was based on, the proposal was not based on public safety. The opposition was based on public safety. And I frankly have a problem with my kids, crossing Allen Street. So last thing I want to see is more zooming cars. We've made that point already. Thank you.
Harry?
Well, the opposition was based on a promise that was made many years ago. That's where that came from. Can I go on?
Sure,
Yes,
yeah,
Gary?
no,
But
yeah.
Gary said the last traffic study was 2004, and the only thing to change was, I remember the buses back at Midway Oval, and actually there's a building owned by the National Tucker Creek Bus back there. That goes all the way back when Jim Harbour was mayor. But the other piece of traffic that has changed a lot in that area is Quantic Plains was built in the late 90s, 95, 97, around there. And traffic had to have progressively gotten worse because of that. I mean, that place is packed all the time.
What the traffic study looked at is whether, the traffic exiting the neighborhood, not Paquonic Plains, but there's 3 points to exit that neighborhood. One's on Central Avenue, where there's a traffic signal now. One is Virginia's Court, and then the third one would be from Fitch Avenue onto Depot Road, and then to Route 1. So what it took a look at was the studies of how many vehicles were exiting and entering, and whether the other two, if we closed one of them down, could the other two roads handle the traffic. And so that's what the traffic study did. There wasn't from 2004 to 14, there wasn't a major traffic generator in the back. One either came in or left. So there's that, but we did not look at, the traffic study didn't look at Paquonic Plains, or if there's more traffic coming up and down Route 1 because of Paquonic Plains, or a store going in further, or subdivisions and Mystic happening further down the road, maybe Mystic Way. It came a little later. We didn't look at that. It was just, could the two remaining entrances onto Route 1 for the neighborhood handle the load, handle the traffic without any violations?
One of the criteria for getting the grant to build Paquonic Plains was its proximity to children that could walk to a park and use it. I remember that.
Yeah.
Go ahead, Greg.
Well, the engineering's not going to go bad, right? It's engineered. We can always go back to this if we have to.
Correct. That has a shelf life.
Rich?
I'd like to make a motion.
Okay.
I'd like to make a motion not to authorize the continuation of this project, as it would effectively cancel the project and leave Virginia's Court as is.
I'll second.
We have a motion and a second. I have a couple questions. Okay.
Number 2.
So it seems to me that this is going to sound nice, but whether or not we do the project, it doesn't affect me either way. I mean, obviously, I think as a body, we want to be safer. We want to have safe roads and safe intersections and that kind of thing. But what strikes me with this is that the town, we have to do a better job of communicating to the stakeholders what's going on. Because if this started in 2006, and the people who were opposed to it caught wind of it 6 months ago or whatever it was, when it was coming to finality, either, I mean, I can only look at us for a communications thing, because I think the people who are it's affecting go about their business. And I know that I heard you say that you talked to the neighborhood association. I think is what you said.
It was the NRZ,
Yeah.
correct.
And clearly, there's a disconnect between them and the people.
Neighborhood.
The neighborhood, right. I would much rather see 3, which would be pursue alternate designs with DOT. That if there's not, like, there's been so much invested in it, and if it is unsafe, maybe there's alternatives to what can be done to safeten it up more, and just not do nothing. So I would prefer to, if there seems to be a strong outcry not to close the road, which I respect, but I mean, if it's, if it doesn't, and it's gonna sound crass, but if it doesn't cost anything to talk to DOT about what other alternatives there are, then I would much rather see that than just to drop it altogether. Bonnie?
I agree with Mayor.
So, yeah, Deb.
I actually agree with Counselor Null and Counselor Flax, because I agree with the whole thought process, and, I do respect the residents. I have talked to a few people that want it closed. I've talked to a few people that don't want it closed. It seemed like there was a more outpour of who didn't want it closed. But, again, we sit here and we try to make the safest, best choices for all of the citizens. And if there is a better alternative than completely shutting something off, then I'd like to at least know what those options are before we completely rule it out.
Rich?
I just think that with the school coming on, the projects, maybe there's an alternative that could be done in conjunction with the school that might satisfy everybody's requirements. So that's why I would say if we just kind of shelved it, if anything, until we found out what we were going to do with the school. Maybe they could, do something that's satisfying everybody.
Dean?
I think that keys into what Bruce said too, which is explore alternatives in the context of the school project, and that's going to generate a whole new traffic pattern, so.
Not to mention the fact that Colchester is eventually going to be closing too, which will affect that intersection.
I can't put a motion on the floor if there's already a motion on the floor, right?
If there's a main motion, you have to deal with the main motion.
Okay. So there is a made motion with a second on the floor, and if there's no further discussion, we can vote on that. And then, Harry?
Yeah, I would like to look at other options too. I agree with a couple of folks here. But in conjunction with that, we need to communicate with the neighborhood, with something we've kind of failed to do. Maybe partner with them and try to work with them and try to figure out if there is something different that can be done to make it safer. I know that when I come there, I know the traffic, there's cars trying to, if I'm going towards Fitch from Town Hall, there's always cars trying to go left in front of me, and I usually am nice and stop and let them go through, but then you gotta look for the car coming over here. Do you know what I mean? That's, and I'm one of those folks that stops for people walking across the street there. A lot of people don't. But that's not gonna change if you close the roads. I guess my intent, and I'll just say this, would be, I'm gonna vote against the motion on the floor, and then maybe someone, if it fails, maybe someone could move this other one, option 3, pursue, and work with the neighborhood and try to see if there's something different we can do with DOT. So that's my feelings on it, so.
Okay.
I could pull the motion off the floor, as long as we don't close Virginia's Court. And we keep that open.
I think that's,
And okay, then I'll pull the motion.
you're withdrawing the motion?
I'll withdraw the motion,
And
providing we don't.
Is the second withdrawn? Whoever made the second?
Greg did.
Yes.
So withdrawn.
Let's withdraw.
Thanks. Bonnie?
I'd like to make a motion to pursue other alternative designs for Virginia's courts with DOT and the neighbors' input.
Providing we don't close the Janice Court.
Well, that's a other alternative.
I'm fine with that wording.
I just want to put it in there, though.
Second for discussion.
Okay, so we have a motion on the floor that we look at alternative designs with DOT that don't include closing for Jens Court. Dean?
That wasn't exactly the motion, but let's just say that is the motion. I mean, Rich is trying to sort of amend it out. I mean, this is how we play it, so we're not strictly, parliamentary rules here. I think, Rich, what'll happen is, if we go forward with just explore other options, and do a better job of communicating and educating and so on and so forth, maybe get the final feel for what people want, and, is it a killing zone or isn't it a killing zone or whatever, that there'd still be an opportunity for you to say, oh, so we've come back to this thing and determined that closing for Jay's Court is the optimal thing. You'll still be able to say, I oppose that. We'll be back, in other words, we're coming right back to where we are right now. So I don't know that Bonnie's motion necessarily has to be qualified quite that way.
It shouldn't be.
Well, I just don't want to open up the door for them to say, well, let's go for another option, but we'll close for Janice Court.
Yeah, I think it's still up in the air. I think that's the purpose of Bonnie's motion, is to leave it up in the air, frankly.
Well, I certainly hope that the Public Works don't come back with that as an alternative plan.
Well, we could vote it down if we wanted to.
It's Department of
Greg?
Transportation.
Yeah, I mean, I think we've all talking here, and Mr. Snyder's listening to us and understands our intent of what we're
absolutely.
reconsidering, so I don't know why he would just go off and disregard everything we just talked about.
Okay.
So,
That's it, add.
Yeah, Mark?
Well, I mean, this is a project that the town council has been aware of for well over 10 years, and it may not have been clear before, possibly. You and the RTM actually funded the construction of this project. It was staff that went off and found an alternative means of funding. So I just was raising my hand. This isn't staff going off and doing, being rogue here. I mean, all you have to do is go out there and look. This is the worst section of Route 1 in the town of Groton. Unfortunately, we've had no luck working with DOT for the last 30 years to do kind of a comprehensive look at Route 1. Everything that's been done out there, some of you may recall, the first intersection that got done was at Meridian Street many, many years ago, when it was still a Bradley's. And then they put all that back together again, and a couple years later, we got them to look at Drostic Drive, which meant they tore up half of what they had just done a couple years before because of the transition lanes, the tapers. And we actually started to have these discussions shortly after, this is in the early 80s, after they completely rebuilt Route 80, is it Route 82 in Norwich? Yes. That they're now in the process of completely rebuilding again. The town has gotten the short end of the stick consistently from DOT. We have talked to DOT about please take a look at Buddington Avenue. Buddington intersection got redone essentially when the town rebuilt Buddington Road back in the late 80s, early 90s. We have talked to DOT until we're blue in our face to look at from Buddington to the bottom of Fort Hill, come up with a comprehensive plan. And this was simply an opportunity to take care of one bad, there are other solutions. Shut some of the driveways to the shopping center across the street, which is, nothing lines up, there's multiple, the traffic movements are crazy. But it wasn't Public Works or staff just going off willy-nilly. And you may not want to do it, you may not believe in the engineering or the accidents or whatever, but it wasn't staff going off road. This is what we thought the council wanted to do. You had approved the money, the RTM approved the money, Gary and his staff, planning staff, identified this other source of funding. that was supposed to be dealing with high-traffic accident areas. And this rose to the surface from a regional standpoint, not just within the town of Groton, but from a regional standpoint. So I certainly, if you want us to go back and look at all their alternatives, that's fine. But it isn't like staff went off and just did something and nobody knew about it. I met out there personally with the chief of police and the then chief of Quantic Bridge Fire, Todd Page. And we went over the very, very preliminary designs, but it was still a complete closure. The current chief, I guess, has different feelings than Todd Page. So maybe part of the problem here is this project's just been around for too long. You know, and I hate to say it, I really didn't want to get into it, but I mean, I think you have to look at the petition, you have to look at who signed it, where they're coming from, possibly where the petition was originated from, and to take some of that into consideration also. And I do believe one of you may have noted a couple meetings ago at something that you had heard from one of the property owners within, or one of the residents, I don't know if they were a property, and take all that into consideration. We can always do a better job communicating with folks, but I would certainly suggest that that may not be the only issue here. I think there's something else going on here too.
Well, and I would say that I don't think that the council is suggesting that Public Works or anybody in the town grandstanded or tried to push something through. Obviously, it came through the council and the council approved it. My point is that if the council is approving these things and going through these steps to do it, and the, you know, there's a number of people on the, who signed into the meeting who were from Midway Oval, and that's what I'm looking at. I mean, they cared enough to come out and speak about it. Is that, that it's not, I'm not faulting, I'm not suggesting that I'm just saying that however we're communicating, when we're doing a project, wherever it's gonna be, whatever the radius is of that project that people are affected, we just need to make sure they're in the loop from the beginning, because if they weren't, maybe we wouldn't have gotten this far, or they would have had buy-in, and they would have, you know, had more buy-in into the project and figured it out. So
I'm not being critical,
Yeah.
Mayor. I think my comments would be more directed at some of the things Councilor Grimm was saying. People have known about this project. I mean, we've been getting calls for months and months and months, and as Gary, I think, noted, we needed, according to the state, to get the plans to what is known as the 30%.
Correct.
So that we have something we can show them besides a sketch. And so, you know, people come out, they don't like what we're proposing, then you go back to the drawing board or you walk away from the project. But this was not a kept secret at all. I mean, I've mentioned meeting with the chief out there. This was years ago, years and years ago. And the new chief has a different opinion, which is fine. Mm-hmm. But it wasn't like we didn't talk to the emergency services at the time.
I understand. Great.
My comment was more defending Mr. Snyder, you know, to support what Mr. Razik was saying. Not that you guys were going off road on your own. It's that I was supporting that he wasn't going to do that based upon the second
And my
resolution.
misunderstanding.
I'd like
Yeah.
to move the question.
You went with the vote? Yeah. Do we, now we have to vote on that.
No.
You know, all those in favor of moving the question, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, abstentions, that passes. All those in favor of the motion, which, to be clear, as it stands, was pursue other alternative designs with DOT. And although many have said it doesn't have to be said, it was said. No, you know, to not include closing for Jen's Corner. So that's where we're at. Yeah, that's right.
To make things safer.
Are you amending the?
No.
Okay. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, abstentions, that passes 8-0. You're against.
I'm opposed because I don't like the last statement added.
Okay. So it's 7-1. to 0. Thank you. Thank you, Gary.
Thank you, thanks.
Thank you, Gary.
Our final item is 2017-0044, the Town Manager Search Committee. And we have our Town Manager Search Consultant here. And we're going to make a motion to go into executive session to include Randy Frank.
I'll move that if you need to, or you move it, and I'll second it.
I'll move it.
Second it.
We have a second? Is there any discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed, abstentions. That does pass 8 to 0.
Where's the pizza?